Welcome, my darlings, to my humble chateau. Please make yourself very comfortable. Relax your mind and release your imagination to me. I will bring you a story to entrance and entertain. Perhaps a frightening one. Perhaps a steampunk. Perhaps a bit of mythology. Anyway, sit back, enjoy, and subscribe to me. Collected Tales 14. The Reaping of the Lost Field. Granny sent me to wake Emily. First thing I noticed was the fact that half the floor was now white fur that lifted a strangely delicate head and looked at me with gold eyes and one ear half lifting. Emily was laying on her back, relaxed in sleep. One hand thrown over her head, one resting on her stomach. She looked so very innocent. I smiled and a movement caught my attention. In the second bed, on the other side of the white mountain of fur, was a pale-haired girl, curled on her side, a fist gripping the blanket tight to her chest. I knew the girl, frowning even in deep sleep. I started to move forward and grab Emily, but the hound stood up and moved between us. It wasn't letting me disturb him. I backed out of the room and returned to the kitchen. We, might have a problem. Both the deputy and Granny looked at me. The girl didn't come back? Granny asked as she lifted a skillet off the stove. She didn't come back alone. Cassie is asleep in the other bed. The look of shock would have been amusing if it wasn't that we knew what Cassie was capable of. Granny started to pick up a spoon, only to find it missing from the counter. Damn it, not sure what it is doing that, but stop taking what I be using. If it's in the sink, wash it to your heart's content. Granny? One of the small folk is trying to be helpful, and I'm thankful, but would they please let me cook breakfast without washing everything I'm using? She grabbed another spoon and stirred something on the back burner. Well, wake the pair up. Breakfast is almost ready. If the hound takes offense, are you going to sew me back together? A nice scallop or maybe a feather stitch. Granny waved the spoon towards the hall. Get the girls. Be a story there I want to know. We are awake. Maybe. Emily was yawning and trying to get a curl to stay out of her eyes. Cassie stood right behind her, rubbing her eyes and grumbling about snoring hounds. For that, the beast's head butted her. Emily waved a hand at the deputy. It was him. Figured that out was coming from the living room. Thought it was you. Cassie glared at the hound, then Emily. Coffee? Granny poured 2 cups and the girls slumped, exhausted, into chairs beside one another. Stayed up too late. Emily stirred the coffee, sipped, stirred it again, frowning at it. Could say early. Was daybreak. What was that red sky saying, Cassie? Cassie muttered, having drunk half the cup. Oh, yeah, Shakespeare. Like a red morn that ever yet betoken, wreck to the seamen, tempest to the fields, sorrow to the shepherds, woe unto the birds. gusts and foul flaws to herdsmen and to herds. Emily sipped the coffee, then seemed to remember she liked milk in hers. That. So what does pink mean? That we should have been asleep, Cassie yawned. Lots of clouds. It's going to storm. Granny served the 2 plates, and they looked at them bleary-eyed and picked at them between nodding off. Had it been any other day, any other situation, the 3 of us would have been chuckling at the pair of teens trying not to face plant in their plates. But this was the pair of would-be queens. They were supposed to be enemies. What was the fox planning? No, Emily saw the truth. Trust her, this needed to be for some reason. Granny finally huffed. What happened last night? Cassie waved a piece of bacon at Emily. She came, got me. We talked till dawn, then passed out. What time is it? A bit after 9. Everyone slept in, Deputy said with clear amusement. Emily groaned and laid her head on the table. 2 hours. Granny rapped the table with a spoon. Girls. Emily looked up. I think I figured it out. Gonna trap a fox. Cassie was snoring, head resting beside her plate. Emily's eyes fluttered closed, and she would have fallen out of the chair if an amused hound hadn't caught her. Wait, just how did that creature manage to look so utterly amused? Cassie and Emily woke up back in bed, with bright autumn sunlight flooding the room. What happened to that storm you said would come? Cassie yawned and shrugged. What day is it? Emily sat up and looked out the window. Same day, I think, just afternoon. Maybe should have warned him. Cassie stood and stretched, careful not to step on anything furry. I know one, my tutor. Who is the other? My oaken sword, the wronged man. He's going to be a twisty part of the bargain we have to make. But he's damned smart, so I think he can figure out what he needs to say. You treat this like a bargain with the devil. You know what we are becoming. We're considered demons by early humans, and probably where that saying came from. We will always have to be careful with our deals. We must stick to the very letter of them. But, well, like the myth of a woman that wants a babe, she pleaded until the Fae gave her an infant boy. And as all she asked for was an infant, that was exactly what she got. An infant who would never age. Emily was trying to make her curls sort out into some sort of order. So you really think? His stomach growled at that point. Wonder if it's safe to ask for a meal. Emily giggled. Yeah, but don't drink any tea unless I have it too. And if you trust me, which I know is hard, we can do this. Just trust me that I cannot lie now, not even to myself. My hair looks like rats styled it. No, they would have done a better job. I'll brush it out for you. Help get the tangles out of mine without plucking me bald. They emerged from the room to a silent house. Emily found a plate covered by a clean cloth with biscuits and bacon on it. The 2 devoured it eagerly. Where are they? Emily looked to her hound and then nodded. The barn. Shall we go face them? Although how I'm going to explain this, I don't know. Cassie smirked. Just tell him the truth. Worked for me, didn't it? Eventually. Cassie was still chuckling, and Emily was trying not to run away as they stepped into the barn. The two blinked, then began laughing loudly. The eggs had been the first sign. No warning that there were other helpful sort out and about. Granny had never removed every egg. Some were fake eggs of stone to encourage the hen to stay in the nests. But the basket on the porch contained every single egg-shaped anything in the barn, including a few golf balls and an old doorknob. The barn had been scrubbed clean. Fresh straw was almost laid out in a mat. The goats were also scrubbed and combed, but it was the poor mule that had suffered the most indignity. His mane was always close-cropped, but didn't stop the helpers from making wreaths of the last flowers and colorful leaves to decorate his neck, and the ragged tail was braided and ribbon-bedecked. The mule glared at the three of us with a fury that was almost tangible. Every tool was laid out clean, sharpened, polished. Every single water trough held clean water, cold. The chickens had fresh sand and gravel that had been neatly combed into a design. Nothing was where it had been, yet everything was put away. Things Granny couldn't even remember having gotten were now displayed. Even the fences had been restored to shiny, perfect order. We were all three trying to make some sense of the sheer amount of change that had happened silently in a single night when we heard the laughter. The pair stood in the doorway, arms around one another's waist to support one another, a white head peering in beside Emily. The tongue lulled and vanished back out. Emily spoke first. "I'm sorry. They just want to help. They used to be scattered out among many, but, well, you're the first that have been able to help in far too many years. So they are enthusiastic. I'll ask them not to be so aggressive with the animals." Granny huffed. "Be lucky if the hens lay for a moon." "At least it isn't spring. Think how many varieties of eggs they could have gathered." Cassie was still laughing softly. She looked almost relaxed when she was happy. Granny was, if anything, more indignant at that thought. The deputy was also shaking with silent laughter now. "By spring, I promise there will be fewer, and only chicken eggs. The chickens that belong to the farm." Emily was speaking to someone in the loft. Now there were two white heads looking in the door, both with tongues lolling in pure amusement. "Damn it!" Cassie yelped and leaped forward. "I thought you only had one." "I do. That one is his." She pointed to the far more massive one we were used to. Cassie was glaring at the pair. "Throw a saddle on it and ride it." Cassie was trying to regain some dignity. "So, am I going to be calling one of those things? And can they see them the way you and I do?" Emily thought for a moment. "No, you have something different. More like Foxy's ability." "Yes and no. They see them as real huge dogs." "He has a name, and what ability?" "Shape-shifting." "We will learn it soon, I think." Emily didn't notice the looks we were giving her, or couldn't think how to react. All three of us wondered what the hounds were supposed to look like if they weren't huge dogs. "He can do what? Is that why you keep calling him Fox's name?" Cassie was honestly surprised. That son of a bitch. So that's how he crept in all the time. Naturally graceful, my ass. No, he's as graceful as a fox, which is natural, I guess, but yes. He can shift, mostly as a fox, but he likes to mimic his brother's hound as well. Emily shrugged her shoulders. I see it sort of, but I think like him you have a main form and what you need. Or maybe what I need of you. What the hunt needs. You know I'm going to hate that whole truth to the letter deal. Cassie rolled her eyes. Girls, Granny spoke forcefully. Kitchen, we need to talk. The girls looked at one another. Figure it out yet? Cassie asked with a grin. Emily's head dropped. Nope. We ended up on the front porch. Seemed that the hounds also wanted in on this conversation, and the 7 of us didn't fit in the kitchen. On the full moon, the brothers can officially ask for us to allow them to claim us. And yes, they have to ask, and we have the right to refuse. She was looking at Cassie. She becomes the summer queen that night, regardless, and I become the winter queen. Nothing they do can change that fact. It is what we were born to be. Well, they could have killed us, but now it is a little too close. They bring the court to us. Summer Queen, the Queen of Fire, the Queen of the Sentence, the Vengeance of the Hunt, which is a small amusement. Foxy is the, well, how to put it, bait of the hunt. Winter Queen, the Queen of Night, Queen of Death, ruler of the hunt. She and I kind of have to work together. A lot more than I even realized till I saw her. And my future king is the caller of the hunt. I'm going to try and explain a little of this because lots of rumors and myths and legends and confusion. If a wrong is committed that makes the very earth cry out to me, I must decide if a hunt is needed. When I do, my king will call for a hunt together. Her husband will become the lure to bring the accused to us. Then she is in charge of actually bringing the accuser to the ground if the... Emily was fighting to form a word or thought. Her hands moved. If they did it, they belong to her. If somehow they are innocent, she brings them to me. So we work tangled with one another, the start and the finish, because once the hunt is finished, she brings me the final outcome. If they were innocent, I must decree and amend. If they were guilty, she decrees a punishment. Cassie smirked. Sounds cool to me. Seems there'll be a lot of hunting when we take our places. Including something unexpected, if I'm right about that. Emily sighed. And I know you are still worried about the other titles, Granny. But think of it this way. Winter is when the land sleeps and recovers for spring. Night is when we sleep and recover for dawn. Death is simply the last sleep and the end of all pain and worry. Cassie made a soft sound of pleased amusement. Whereas I am fire that both creates and destroys. Summer that brings little rest and much work. And what she calls the sentence, the final judgment of guilt, which I think I can use for our purpose. Emily and Cassie smiled at one another. Just trust me for a little bit. I know the truth path. I can speak truth and win this for us all, and for more." She nodded her head towards the bushes that lined the yard. We had all noticed the leaves that moved with no breeze there. "I won't let Cassie and them be enslaved. I'm going to have to keep silent of a few things till that night. Just please trust me. I know we can do this." The female hound lifted her head and placed it in Emily's lap. I was going to be a drunken fool by the full moon at this rate. A full moon started peeking over the tree line. The night was chill, but so clear, 1,000 stars shone above. Emily had insisted we come to the lost field, all of us. The deputy stood on one side of her, and I on the other. Granny was unhappy, but standing off to the side. The past 2 weeks, I swore, had added an inch to Emily, and her hair curled midnight black around her shoulders. The deputy and I had additional gray hairs from the past 2 weeks. A rather crash course in what is what and needs what to not be unhappy. Emily guided us through some of it and kept telling us to trust Cassie, who had returned to her home. The two were not in contact that I could tell. Couldn't speak for the other two, but we didn't trust Cassie anymore. She belonged to the fox. When Cassie appeared, she was taller as well, slender, and her hair glowed in the pale light. Her eyes, no longer hidden by the green contacts, were golden. They walked forward to a spot across from one another as the first rays of moonlight fell on the field. As soon as they were bathed in the silvery light, it seemed all color was washed away. All of the field, or rather a meadow now, were tones of gray and silver. The girls were haloed in silver and gold. With each step towards one another, they altered, first their garments, lovely robes made of silk and velvet, heavy with embroidery and jewels, which Cassie plucked at in annoyance. They were visibly becoming full adults. A flash of red gold, and the Foxy brother stepped out, looking smug in his radiant garments, silver white, and the hound was walking beside his master, who was simply dressed in black homespun pants and a white linen shirt. In his hand, he held the crown that made me think of snowflakes enlarged and turned to crystal. The silence was unnatural. Both the deputy and I were stiffening as the twins came closer to the girls. Could we trust Cassie? She said nothing, but then neither did Emily. The twins might have started with the same face, but to see them, one could never mistake them. Foxy was sly. He smirked and stood arrogantly. The other had a stunned expression of amazement on his face. He saw nothing but Emily. He walked to her and placed the sparkling crown on her hair. "All that I have, I forsake to you. My court is now yours. My wealth is yours. I come to you as nothing but a man who loves you. Never again will I gather gold, only your laughter. Never again shall I strive for a palace, only a smile from you." Emily was blushing, but there was also a breath of relief from her. Cassie looked relieved. They were counting on some part of this. "You shall be my king, and stand beside me always. You shall be my voice when the very soil cries out for vengeance." Emily reached a hand out to take his. A glance to us, and she suddenly lifted her head and seemed to scream silently, her back arched. The deputy and I were halfway to her when we saw them. All of the children, every single child that had died in the field, now stood over the place they had died. I looked to the pawpaw tree. My sister stood, her hair dark and straight to her waist. I didn't think she knew who I was, but she was looking towards another girl in the field, hair just as long and straight, but a pale color. These were the sisters who died the night I was tossed into a river of time. At the same time, Cassie also yelped and stiffened, and Granny cried out in surprise. We whirled to see, not the wizened old woman, but a girl barely old enough to care for herself, drowning in a dress meant for a grown woman. Emily stepped forward quickly, grabbing Cassie's hand, something you could almost feel swirling about them. "Cassandra, Queen of Summer." Cassie's eyes opened in wonder. "Emmeline, Queen of Winter." "They cry to me, Cassandra. They cry for the wrong done. Give to me the innocents, the wronged. They scream to me, Emmeline. They scream in terror. Give to me those who be fitted from death and enslavement. Corey, call to them. Call them to come. A wrong must be amended." Both spoke as a single voice. So he had a name for the one finally, and he looked rather shocked and pleased at the same time. As the Queen's will. His voice was not loud, but it echoed and rippled about us, through us, ancient words, and something came in answer to them, slinking to the edge of the field. The other brother was also shocked, looking and not nearly as pleased looking. His body twisted and reformed till he was a fox with a coat the color of liquid gold and eyes of candle-lit amber. Emily took a step back from Cassie as she began to change, twisting, till, for a moment, I swore it was a unicorn, the hide gleaming like starlight. I stepped forward, as did the deputy, drawn to touch the silken mane. Then Emily touched us, and we both saw there were two horns, sweeping back from the skull, twisted and graceful arcs. When the mouth opened, there were fangs, never meant to crop grass, but rather to rend flesh. Even what I took to be a dainty hooves were sharp claws that stabbed into the earth. The pearl beauty of the hide was now the sickening paleness of a drowned corpse. I was horrified by the sight, and from the way the deputy looked, so was he. "Kelpie," my sister spoke softly, the new gift telling her everything she needed to know on seeing Cassie's form. "My sister dear, bring to me the first accused." The Kelpie, or rather Cassie, whirled about and grabbed the fox by the scruff of his neck. A sharp, piercing yelp made us wince. A shake of her head, and she tossed the fox to Emily's feet. There he shifted back to a more human form and would have backed away, but Cassie laid a now human hand on his shoulder. "Guilty." 'Tis madness. I be a king. I'm not a common ruffian to be treated such by children. Silence. Emily looked behind us. Hazel stepped forth. Be this the one who cursed you? Granny, or rather the child she had once been, moved unsteadily in a dress too large for her tiny frame. That be he, who I met in the field. Foxy wanted to talk, but the command of silence stayed on him, and something allowed Cassie to hold him in place, with only a hand on his shoulder. Hazel, are you a maiden yet? The girl frowned in confusion, then shook her head. Ain't never bled. Weren't old enough before, and too old after. Cassandra, is this a child? Cassie looked up with a sly smile. I find this one known as Hazel to be a child. A child can have no sin. I lay no claim to her. Emily nodded. She is mine, and I find her servitude cruel and unwarranted. I shall make amends as I am able to. Summer Queen, who has wronged this child? I now was starting to understand what the pair planned. I wanted to burst out laughing as Cassie looked down at the ginger-haired man that knelt between them. I find Shone guilty. He belongs to me once. Summer Queen, I ask you now, who has brought sorrow to the 7 daughters of the Sin-Eater? Oh, Foxy's eyes were getting large now, as Cassie gave her verdict, one that rippled with truth. 7 daughters, sired by sin, yet all born innocent. 7 daughters, given grief by Shone. If the 7 daughters are innocent, they are mine. Emily was looking directly at Cassie, who never stopped smiling. Winter Queen, I find them all to have been born innocent. They are yours, unclaimed by me. Only their tormentor is mine. Shone belongs to me twice. Cassandra, 6th daughter of the Sin-Eater, I claim you as mine. Shone, Foxy, was practically foaming at the mouth now with rage, but still held down by a single hand. Not even bearing down on him, Cassie moved a bit to the side and knelt. My queen, I am yours. Emily turned to Corey. Will you kneel to me? Corey stepped forward and knelt. My beloved, I have belonged to you since you drew your first breath. As was willed, so it has become. 2 brides stand before you. Because of your lies and hate shown, your bride now rules over you. Because of your harm, I rule over your bride. Because of love, I rule over my bridegroom. My left and my right hand, my love and my sister. Can any speak against this truth? Emily, no, this was Queen Emmeline, spoke out as I got my first true look at the other kin. They were as varied as leaves, some tiny, some tall, some gnarled, some lovely, many in no way looking remotely human. They gathered about the edges of the field. Wronged man, there is an innocent held in limbo. I cannot claim because his father has not made a pact. She looked to the deputy, and something in her eyes was warning us there was a high price if he failed to meet her expectation. I spoke softly to him. Those who benefited from death. You need to make a request for your son, but watch what you say. He was staring at an infant laying asleep in a grassy clump. I wish for my children to know how much I love them, for them to be placed on the path they were meant to walk. Well, damn. Garrick seemed to have a little poet in him. Emmeline looked to the other. How do you judge him? Cassandra shrugged. He has been wronged. He is not mine. But is there a single amend I can give to these children? Their mortal lives taken. I shall give to them a second life within the court of winter. All the children began to glow, and suddenly, Elvin, that was the name we'd given to them once, the Fae, the Seelie, tall and graceful, they moved freely now. My sisters moved towards one another to embrace. The infant was now a young boy, with a messy head of red hair and eyes that promised pure mischief as he sat up. The deputy moved to help him stand up as I moved to my sisters. They looked at me with surprise now, seeing me for who I was. It was chaos and celebration within the field. From somewhere, tables laden with food emerged. The field was a confusion of flowers from every season, of laughter and music. Oh, and the hunt still stalked nearby. Later there would be many brought to ground for their crimes. Cassandra's court would still need to be brought forward. Those guilty of crimes would be twisted into her new servants. Towards some hour of night that should have had me exhausted, I approached the impromptu throne set up. Emmeline was seated in the center, with Corey on her right and Cassandra on her left. Shone was in fox form, laying at Cassandra's feet. The two hounds were lounging nearby. The queens were both smiling, which I think is part of the reason for the jubilation of the assorted gathering. Or maybe it was the fact that Shone was finally getting caught in his own trouble. Emmeline motioned for me to come closer. You are still worried, but you need not be. I am still young, but there is time. Corey, will you give me 7 mortal years before I come forever to dwell in the hollow beneath? She looked to her right with a sly smile. The man shook his head. My love, I've waited 7 centuries for you. Will be 7 years before I truly believe you have come to my side. It shall be but a breath of time after the long wait. I nodded. This sounded like a good trade, a 7-year courtship. And what about him? Cassandra chuckled. It is said, you reap what you sow. I think 7 years till the courts are declared complete should be enough time to come to an agreement. I think I almost felt sorry for Shone. Emmeline sat back, a shy smile. Rowan, I'm afraid I have a very strange request to make of you soon. I have a very long road ahead of me. I have many amends to make, and I'm afraid I need to ask of you a task. And what would that be? Enjoy the night. Tomorrow is soon enough to discuss the future. For now, sister dear, are you ready for the hunt? Cassandra stood with an eager smile. Sister Knight, tell me which you would have brought to your feet. My fox will bring them from hiding. Again she shifted, the gorgeous fairy beast that I knew hid a nightmare now. Still I was drawn to stroke that mane, which I knew was more like rotting water weeds than silk. A growl that no equine should be able to make, and shot off in fox form. As Cassandra reared, more creatures, including the 2 white hounds, swarmed to her. She led the pack on to a hunt I knew would terrorize this community for years to come. I also knew they had earned this terror for all the grief they had caused, for the sin they had wallowed in, and the desires that had clouded their minds and poisoned their souls. I took a seat nearby and watched the remaining new-minted fae enjoying the first night of freedom. Off to the side, the deputy was getting to know his fae son, who had found others close to his age. He was living up to the promise of the mischief in his eyes. Granny, brother Hazel, sat down beside me. "You think I'm to start over as this?" I shook my head. "I think she's trying to find a way to make amends to you. Garrick's boy is trying to get himself kicked out the first night." I pointed to the little fireball that was now being chased by a group of mud-splattered young females, and they were not looking as if they wished to hug and adore him. Hazel laughed. "That child has many years of living to make up for. So do your sisters." The 2 I knew had been my sisters were standing near a table with a miniature court of young males, rose red and snow white. I remembered that fairy tale of 2 sisters, one dark, one fair, both lovely, graceful, and sweet-tempered. I think they told it to me. Hazel frowned. "We be witnessing the start of the fall of mortals, you know." I nodded. I knew. Magic is coming back, and one day magic will fade again, an ending becoming the beginning of another. We both looked towards the sound of the hunt, the baying, howling, screaming that echoed through the night, said that they had had their first target in sight. Hazel plucked at her oversized skirt. "Gonna be death tonight." I instinctively wrapped an arm around the tiny shoulders, pulling her close for comfort. "Only for those that earned it, and not for you." Morning was still a long time off. It was almost a week before I saw Emily again. A week of dealing with Hazel fussing about being too damn small for anything. The deputy stayed with the court. Him walking up one morning was first sign we had that the Winter Queen would visit. He looked good, rested and relaxed. "Mornin'. Guess you 2 been layin' low." I poured him a cup of coffee from the ancient coffee pot that was now too heavy for Hazel. Considering we hear the hunt nightly, seems smart to stay out of the way. "They brought my wife in 2 nights ago." He took a gulp of hot coffee, a move I'd seen before, punishing himself for his dark thoughts. She didn't see me or the boy. The boy knew her, but didn't seem to care. Why should he care for his murderer? Cassandra's court is formed from a mixture. The guilty who become servants. There were some of the children who couldn't forgive. Their anger twisted them and they joined Cassandra. Your sister stayed with Emmeline. So did Tamber, my boy. Lord, is he a handful. Would have made me run in circles. There was a pride in his voice that overrode the annoyance. He's still making you run in circles." Emily's voice was calm and amused. She slipped into the kitchen, followed by her hound. She took the cup I offered. "It is still working out, but it will be fine soon." After getting my own cup and refilling it, I sat down. "How did you do it? Cassie changed." Emily, I couldn't think of her as Emmeline yet, blushed brightly. "I started restoring her the night I went to her. She was hurt badly, twisted. My gift is to restore, revive, so I started healing her. One of her gifts is growth. She responded without knowing it, to start making us both grow up faster." I looked, and yes, the lost child was almost a grown woman now. I knew I had to have a flawless argument for my taking command. Cassandra, once she was healed enough, didn't want the task I will have. She was fine with stepping to the side for me. Corey never wished to rule me. Only Shone was the problem. But when I realized I could judge him thrice on sin, he belonged to Cassandra, and so I didn't need to force him to kneel. He was already below my sister. 3. Hazel. He shouldn't have tricked a child. The Sin Eater's daughters. He caused 7 women to suffer and was responsible for the death of 4 girls. And the speaker. The girls in Emma's family that he killed and blamed on the White Hound. They were never meant to be his bride. He wanted them killed so they couldn't fulfill their role, to call forth the elder court and reveal he had betrayed the pact. What pact? All 3 of us managed to ask as one. No Fae was to interfere with mortal-born till the night the Queen stepped into the lost field. Emily looked a bit amused. He kind of is in a lot of trouble, even after Cassandra releases him. He tried to force it to favor him, and instead he has lost everything, possibly even his bride. Cassandra is not drawn to accept him any longer. Her mind is healthy enough. He can't twist her emotions now. And you? Emily's ears were red as roses from the blush. I will have a husband in 7 years. I keep thinking that choice of time, but it is what I know must be. There are some things that need to happen first. I was made complete the moment I looked into his eyes. So what needs to happen? This week has been hunting down every parent that sacrificed their child, be it in the field or not. The child comes to be the murder to Cassandra. She's creative after what she endured. Emily frowned. Now we start making a place for all the other lost kin to return to, the ones that had to hide away when the Fae were locked out. It isn't going to happen in a year, or even 7. But yes, mortal man must learn to live alongside the other kin again. The deputy will take back his place in the mortal world, a bridge between myself and it. We will with luck create a better community. Hazel, well, she has a choice. She may grow and live as a mortal child, the life stolen from her, if that is her choice. I will live here as her parent for the next 7 years. She may join my court, or she may take the hand of death and rest. Not going to ask her choice for a bit, so she can think about it. Hazel looked wistful. She was both annoyed at being a child with limits and intrigued to have a chance at a real life. Rowan, I need you to find something. One of my sisters died to protect it. There's a creek gorge. I have a decent idea where, in a small hole, maybe an animal den, is a box wrapped in oilcloth. In that box is a page from an ancient manuscript. The words on it mean little. Rather, there is a drop of blood on the edge of that page. With it, you can find the Church of the Iron Cross and enter the door. Why do you need me to do this? Because that is where you will find the lady. Emily was shifting about. Why do you need me to find this lady? I already dreaded the answer. Because you have to take a vial of my blood to the lady. The nervousness in her voice told me this was not going to be a simple task. Even she didn't know then that it would take me almost 7 years to return to her with the lady's answer. So quoth this raven. Oh, my darlings, we seem to have reached the pinnacle of this story, with a bit more to come, but this was so magnificent. I absolutely adored it. Please let Gelfwyn know if you enjoyed it. Please like, so we all know you liked it. Subscribe, and ring the little bell if you haven't, so you know when to come up and see me. And if you leave a comment, I will do my best to comment back. So happy for this episode, my darlings. Till next time. Bye-bye.